those kids. In fact, I hate anyone that ever had a pony when they were growing up.
I had a pony.
Imagine this. NBC execs actually thought a show about four self-absorbed New Yorkers doing absolutely nothing would define an entire generation. Can you believe that? The 90s were all about sitcoms, but Seinfeld didn't just follow the rules. It broke them. No laugh track, no cheesy drama, just pure real-life absurdity and chaos. Sounds insane, right? Today, I'm about to share 8 insane facts about Seinfeld that will make you see it in a whole new light. From unexpected cast changes to decisions that made TV history, these aren't just your average trivia tidbits. They're the weird, wild moments that shaped the show. You won't believe the shocking secrets we're about to uncover. These are the kind of behind-the-scenes moments that could have easily derailed the entire show. Ready for it? Let's dive in!
Blow through their savings in this community. It's low rent. And we feel that Florida is really the place where they should be.
You can drop a grand in Disney World like
Number 1. The pilot that NBC basically threw in a drawer. Seinfeld was one of the most dominant sitcoms in television history. By the time the finale credits rolled in 1998, it had run for 9 seasons, produced 180 episodes, and left a cultural footprint so enormous that people still drop Seinfeld quotes at family dinners like they're reading from scripture. No soup for you! Not that there's anything wrong with that. Yada yada yada. Even your grandmother probably says yada yada yada. Which, come to think of it, she might be using at completely inappropriate moments without realizing it. We'll give her a pass. Naturally, with a legacy like that, you'd assume the NBC executives who watched the original pilot immediately knew they were holding something extraordinary, right? Wrong. Spectacularly, embarrassingly wrong. The original pilot, titled The Seinfeld Chronicles, aired on July 5th, 1989. It was quiet. It was odd. It was 30 minutes of 2 guys sitting around an apartment debating whether a woman's voicemail message meant she liked someone romantically. There were no explosions, no dramatic revelations, no warm, teachable family moment at the end. Just conversation. Very specific, very particular, slightly absurdist, that means strange in a way that doesn't follow normal logic. Conversation. On paper, the potential was visible. Jerry Seinfeld was already a well-known stand-up comedian. The writing was sharp. The observations were genuinely funny. New York City provided an endlessly chaotic backdrop. There were real reasons to believe in it. The problem was the focus group. NBC, as networks do, sent the pilot to a test audience, basically a panel of regular viewers brought in to watch something and rate it. The feedback was, to put it charitably, a disaster. The report essentially said that none of the characters were particularly likable, the show had no clear premise, and nothing happened. Which was, of course, entirely intentional. But focus groups tend not to appreciate intentional emptiness. They're looking for familiar warmth. Seinfeld offered them something else entirely. Like handing someone a perfectly crafted modernist painting and watching them say, I don't know, the colors seem a bit sad. NBC ordered exactly 4 additional episodes. Not a full season pickup, not a vote of confidence, 4 episodes. The television equivalent of saying, we'll keep you on life support, but we're not exactly optimistic. Behind the scenes, co-creator Larry David reportedly fought to keep the show exactly as it was. No warmer characters, no manufactured stakes, no softening of the edges. The network pushed. Larry David, in the manner that would eventually become the basis of an entirely separate television show, refused. NBC moved forward reluctantly, and reluctant decisions, as it turns out, sometimes age into the greatest choices ever made. Seinfeld proved that the gatekeepers of taste, focus groups, nervous executives, people in suits who have never personally found anything funny, are not always the right judges of genius. The most important thing a creator can sometimes do is protect the work from the very people trying to help it.
You said it was my call.
We were just being nice.
Number 2. George Costanza is literally Larry David, and he barely even hit it. Seinfeld gave the world one of the most celebrated ensemble casts in sitcom history. Jerry, George, Elaine, Kramer, 4 people who, by any reasonable measure, probably shouldn't be allowed to share the same city block, let alone the same group of friends. But together, they were perfect. And when you look at George Costanza, magnificently petty, catastrophically insecure, And yes, catastrophically means disastrously in the most spectacular fashion possible, inexplicably confident despite a life record of near-total failure. You'd assume someone invented him, constructed him carefully out of imagination and comic instinct. Nope. George Costanza is Larry David. Almost completely, barely disguised at all. Larry David, the co-creator and original head writer of Seinfeld, based the character of George almost entirely on himself. His anxieties, his failed relationships, his professional humiliations, his very specific habit of making the absolute worst possible decision in any given situation, and then defending it with the full force of his personality until someone else was forced to back down. On paper, basing a character on yourself sounds like a creative shortcut. In practice, it's something rarer. It's radical honesty disguised as comedy. Because Larry David wasn't really writing a character, he was writing a confession. A very long, very public, extremely funny confession that ran on national television for 9 years and made him a very rich man. The specifics are almost too precise to be accidental. Many of George's on-screen stories, the lies he tells employers, the ways he systematically destroys relationships he claims to want, the small acts of pettiness elevated to matters of personal principle, were drawn directly from Larry David's real experiences. The George Costanza who pretends to be an architect? That tracks. The George who eats stolen food from an office fridge without a single moment of guilt? Deeply Larry David. What makes this even better is that Jason Alexander, the actor who played George for 9 years, reportedly didn't fully understand where the character was coming from for most of the show's run. He was building the performance in the dark. When he eventually spent more time observing Larry David directly, he said the whole thing suddenly snapped into focus, like finally reading the instruction manual after assembling the furniture. Behind the scenes, this meant the writer's room had an unusual creative shortcut for every episode. When they asked, "What would George do?" they were really asking, "What would Larry do?" And Larry always knew the answer, because he'd usually already done it. George Costanza proved that the most believable fictional characters aren't invented, they're confessed. And sometimes the bravest thing a writer can do is put themselves on screen, unflatteringly, unflinchingly, with absolutely no protective distance, and let the whole country laugh. Here's something that honestly gets to me a little. A huge portion of the people watching this right now have never subscribed to this channel. Maybe the algorithm sent you here. Maybe someone shared it. Maybe YouTube just had one of those mysterious late-night suggestions that somehow always lands. But you've been here for 2 entries now, learning things about a show you genuinely love. And maybe you even felt that little jolt of, wait, I actually didn't know that. Subscribing costs you nothing, not a single thing. But it means the world to a channel committed to treating classic television with the seriousness and love it deserves. You're not clicking a button. You're joining the people who believe these stories are worth telling properly. That's rare. And we've got 6 more to go. Let's keep moving.
Anyone in front of me got free bread.
You want bread?
Yes, please.
$3! What? No soup for you!
Number 3. The Soup Nazi was a real person, and he hated every second of it. Seinfeld had a rare and remarkable gift. It could introduce a completely minor character, give them a single episode, and transform them into a permanent fixture of cultural memory. The Soup Nazi is perhaps the purest example of this. 1 episode, 1 phrase, 30 years of staying power that shows absolutely no sign of slowing down. NBC, to their credit, or perhaps their extreme nervousness, was initially uncomfortable about a primetime sitcom character whose title contained the word Nazi, which is, to be fair, a reasonable position. It's not exactly a light word to deploy in a comedy about soup. But the writers held firm. The episode aired, and it became one of the most beloved half hours the show ever produced. On paper, the concept was perfectly built for Seinfeld's universe. A vendor so extraordinarily skilled at his craft that he felt completely justified, even morally obligated, to treat his customers with open contempt. The joke works because the audience understands it immediately. People will endure almost anything if the product is exceptional enough. We have all, at some point, tolerated something absurd from someone who is very good at their job. The problem, and I use that word loosely, is that the Soup Nazi was not a fictional creation. His name is Al Yagana. He ran a real establishment in New York City called Soup Kitchen International, and Al Yagana was, by most accounts from people who actually queued there, genuinely like that. Strict procedural rules. That means process-based, you follow the steps or you leave. Extraordinary food. Enormous queues. And absolutely no tolerance whatsoever for customers who didn't respect the system. The difference between the fictional version and the real one? Al Yagana was furious about the portrayal. He hated the Soup Nazi nickname with a depth of feeling that he made very public. He felt it was deeply disrespectful, that reducing his culinary dedication and genuine craft to a cheap Nazi joke trivialized everything he'd built. He gave interviews. He pushed back. He was, putting it plainly, not amused. Behind the scenes, the writers had researched the real soup bender carefully before writing the episode. They weren't significantly exaggerating. The rules, the cues, the contempt for disorder, most of it was based on observed reality. What's beautifully ironic is that the episode made Yegana's restaurant dramatically more famous. Lines got longer, the mystique grew. People who'd never heard of the place before the episode aired started showing up, some of them half hoping to be thrown out, which somehow made the experience more appealing. The Soup Nazi episode proved that Seinfeld wasn't just observing New York City, it was documenting it. And sometimes, the people being documented would have much preferred to be left off the record entirely.
Oh, yeah. I got Emily coming over tonight.
You letting him have a woman over?
He's not family. It's different psychologically.
Number 4. Kramer was also a real person, and he turned it into a business. Speaking of characters who turned out to be real people, let's talk about Kramer. The sliding entrances, the wild entrepreneurial energy. And yes, entrepreneurial means business-driven, always chasing the next scheme. The hair that defied both gravity and reasonable explanation. Michael Richards created one of the great physical comedy performances in television history, a character who seemed to exist in a slightly different reality from everyone around him, and was completely unbothered by the gap. But here's the thing, Kramer wasn't invented either. Larry David had a real neighbor in his New York apartment building, a man named Kenny Kramer. And Kenny Kramer was, by the accounts of people who knew him, remarkably close to the fictional version. Wild ideas, unusual schemes, an almost gravitational ability to wander into situations that had nothing to do with him, and somehow become the centerpiece of them. On paper, basing a character on a real neighbor is a perfectly normal creative move. What's unusual is what Kenny Kramer did once he found out. He monetized it, completely, without hesitation. Kenny Kramer launched something called Kramer's Reality Tour, an actual, ticketed, guided bus tour of New York City, highlighting real locations connected to Seinfeld, and specifically to his character. He ran it for years. He gave interviews. He embraced being the real Kramer with the kind of enthusiastic, unironic confidence that, you have to admit, is very much on brand. The beautiful irony here is that the fictional Kramer was always launching schemes that fell apart somewhere between the idea and the execution. The real Kenny Kramer launched a scheme based entirely on being the inspiration for a fictional schemer, and it worked flawlessly. Behind the scenes, Larry David has spoken openly about how much of both Seinfeld and his later show Curb Your Enthusiasm draws from real experiences and real people in his life. Kenny Kramer, for his part, appears to hold absolutely no grudges. If anything, he seems delighted by the entire arrangement. Kenny Kramer's story proved that life doesn't just imitate art. Sometimes the person being imitated is already composing the ticket pricing before the paint is dry. And honestly, good for him.
What was that? She scared the hell out of me, my God! I almost had a heart attack!
Number 5. Jerry Seinfeld turned down $110 million because he believed the story was done. By season 9, Seinfeld was the undisputed peak of American network television. The show was pulling in audience numbers that modern streaming platforms would describe, through barely concealed envy, as a different era. Advertisers were paying over $1 million for a single 30-second commercial slot during the broadcast. $1 million for 30 seconds of airtime during a sitcom about people arguing about parking. NBC, aware that they were sitting on the most valuable piece of real estate in television, and acutely aware that valuable real estate doesn't stay available forever, came to Jerry Seinfeld with an offer to continue for a 10th season. The number on the table was $110 million. Jerry Seinfeld said no. On paper, this sounds genuinely unhinged. $110 million! That's not walkaway money. That's buy a small island and hire someone to make you soup, following the rules, of course, money. Most people offered $110 million to continue doing something they were already doing and were already extraordinary at, would say yes before the other person had finished the sentence. Jerry's reasoning was, and remains, one of the most quietly admirable creative decisions in television history. He felt the show had reached its natural conclusion. He didn't want to extend it past the point of greatness for the sake of income. He would rather end it right than let it run profitable and diminished. That concept, protecting the integrity of something creative over its financial potential, is so rare in the entertainment industry that it barely has a vocabulary yet. Behind the scenes, this wasn't an easy decision. There was internal pressure. There were conversations. Larry David had already departed after season 7, and Jerry had been navigating the final seasons largely on his own instincts. He knew, with the quiet certainty that only belongs to the person who built something from nothing, that the story had been told. The finale aired on May 14, 1998. 76 million people watched. That's more than double the viewership of most modern Super Bowls. For context, 76 million people is roughly the entire population of the United Kingdom deciding to watch the same thing on the same evening. Which would never happen, but Seinfeld somehow managed it. Seinfeld proved that the most expensive skill in creative work isn't knowing how to build an audience, it's knowing when the story is finished, and having the discipline and the courage to stop before the audience forces you to. I'll be honest with you, it genuinely bothers me that so many people will make it this far through a video like this and then just scroll away, like finishing a genuinely great meal and walking out without leaving so much as a nod to the chef. You've been here for 5 entries. You've learned things that most lifelong Seinfeld fans have never heard. Never. Dropping a comment below, even just one line about which fact genuinely got you, keeps this channel alive more than most people realize. And subscribing is free. It always will be. But being part of the community of people who think classic television deserves this kind of care and attention, that's actually something worth being part of. For those of you who already have, you already know what this is. Let's finish strong. Number 6. The cast negotiated together and changed Hollywood forever. By the middle seasons, Seinfeld's 4 principal cast members, Jerry Seinfeld, Julia Louis-Dreyfus, Jason Alexander, and Michael Richards, were among the most recognized performers on American television. But the path to what they were eventually paid is a story about solidarity. That means sticking together as a unified group that Hollywood still talks about. In the early seasons, the cast earned standard network rates. Nothing unusual, a relatively modest compensation for a show that wasn't yet a proven commodity. But as the ratings climbed and the show became undeniable, the 4 lead actors began to recognize something important. Their collective leverage, their combined power to demand things, was vastly greater than anything any one of them could exercise on their own. So they negotiated as one, all 4, together, as a unified front. If one earned more, they all earned more. If NBC wanted the show, they were getting 4 performers as an indivisible package, not 4 separate conversations. This approach, called block negotiating, meaning the group acts as one bargaining unit rather than competing against each other, was almost entirely unprecedented for a sitcom cast of this scale at this moment in television history. By the final seasons, each of the 4 leads was earning approximately $600,000 per episode. And by some credible accounts, negotiations were approaching the $1 million per episode mark as the show headed toward its conclusion. The impact didn't stay contained to Seinfeld. It established a model, a living template for how cast members of wildly successful shows could use collective worth as a negotiating instrument. The cast of Friends watched, learned, and later deployed the exact same strategy, eventually reaching that $1 million per episode mark per actor that Seinfeld's cast had pioneered. Behind the scenes, the solidarity between all four actors is consistently cited as one of the reasons the on-screen chemistry felt so genuine. They weren't positioned against each other by the network. They were protecting each other from it. Seinfeld's cast proved that knowing your individual worth is valuable, but knowing your worth alongside the people around you is a different and far more powerful thing entirely. Some negotiations aren't about what you're owed. They're about what you're worth, together. And the difference is enormous.
Really? How'd you do that?
A friend of Susan's.
My Susan?
Why'd you tell her?
Number 7. Jason Alexander nearly didn't get the role and wasn't sure it was working. We've established that George Costanza is Larry David, in a slightly more forgiving costume. But here's the part of that story that almost never gets told. The role nearly went to someone else entirely, and even after Jason Alexander got it, he spent significant portions of the early run genuinely unsure whether any of it was working. Before Alexander was cast, the role went through an extensive process that reportedly left network executives and producers in a state of real uncertainty. This was not a clean, obvious decision. Multiple actors were considered. Different interpretations of the character were tested, some leaning too far into broad physical comedy, losing the specificity, others too dramatic, stripping out the essential comedic timing that made George function. Jason Alexander came in and did something particular. He played George's failure as genuinely real. Not performed, not exaggerated for comic effect, real. The comedy emerged from the audience's recognition of the truth inside the failure, not from any winking acknowledgement that it was all a bit. But here's the detail that sits with me. Alexander has said in numerous interviews that for a significant portion of the early seasons, he wasn't confident the show was going to find its audience. He was, in his own words, figuring it out. In public, episode by episode, without the safety net of knowing it would eventually become a cultural monument. Behind the scenes, that private uncertainty shaped the character in ways that can't be replicated by an actor who knows they're on a hit. A George who secretly knew he was on solid ground would have been a completely different George. Less specific, less painful, less real. The casting of Jason Alexander proved that the best performances often aren't born from certainty and confidence. They're born from genuine doubt, genuine effort, and the willingness to be wrong in front of an audience and keep going anyway. Which, when you think about it, is a very George Costanza thing to do.
What did you say?
I don't know what the hell I said. I gave her an ultimatum, and there's nothing I can do. It's a machine. The little light is blinking right now.
Number 8.
Come and listen.
76 million people watched the finale, and then mostly hated it. We saved the most extraordinary one for last, as we always do. By the time May 14th, 1998 arrived, Seinfeld wasn't just a popular show, it was a fixture, a shared experience that ran on a collective cultural schedule. The announcement of the finale was treated with the seriousness usually reserved for scheduled national events. News programs covered it, restaurants ran watch night specials, people organized viewing gatherings with a level of planning that would be impressive for a wedding. 76 million people tuned in to a sitcom finale on a Thursday. 76 million is a number so large that most modern streaming platforms discuss it in hushed, slightly reverent tones, the way older generations discuss a relative who once met someone genuinely famous. And then, the episode aired. In the finale, Jerry, George, Elaine, and Kramer are arrested in a small Massachusetts town for violating a Good Samaritan law, which, to quickly explain, is a law requiring bystanders to assist someone in trouble. After they film and mock a man being robbed rather than helping him, they're put on trial, and witnesses from across 9 seasons of their worst moments are called to testify against them. Every person they ever wronged gets their moment. The audience reaction was swift, widespread, and largely negative. Critics called it cold. Fans felt punished. People who had spent 9 years affectionately watching these 4 self-involved people felt, suddenly, like they'd been asked to sit in judgment of their own taste in Friends. The condemnation, which means formal, public criticism delivered with conviction, was significant and immediate. On paper, or rather, in the writer's room, this was the most Seinfeld ending imaginable. The show had spent 9 years building a philosophy. No hugging, no learning, no redemption, no growth. These people are exactly who they've always been. And that is the point. And isn't it hilarious? And also perhaps a little damning? The finale was simply the final, logical expression of that philosophy, taken to its honest conclusion. Larry David came back from his post-season 7 departure specifically to co-write this ending alongside Jerry. They knew the audience, they understood the expectations, and they wrote the ending the show deserved instead. Behind the scenes, both creators have been consistent. They believe it was the right ending, not the popular one, the right one. And here's what time has done to the critical consensus. It's shifted substantially. Many writers and critics who initially dismissed the finale have returned to it over the years and concluded that it was, in fact, the only honest conclusion available. That a show about accountability-free selfishness could not responsibly end with warmth and redemption without betraying its entire 9-year argument. Seinfeld proved that the right ending and the popular ending are sometimes separated by years of distance, and that the most faithful thing you can do for a piece of creative work is finish it the way the work demands, not the way the room expects. Sometimes the audience catches up. Sometimes it just takes a while. And there it is. 8 things you thought you understood about Seinfeld, and 8 reasons why the real story underneath is stranger, messier, more human, and more fascinating than anything that ever made it to air. A show that nearly got buried by a focus group that didn't recognize what it was looking at. A character who was secretly a confession, disguised as a comedy bit. A real man who made extraordinary soup, and deeply resented being made legendary for it. A neighbor who turned being someone else's inspiration into his own entire career. And a creator who looked at $110 million and said genuinely that the story was done. This is why classic television matters, not just as entertainment, but as a record, as proof of what human creativity looks like when it's fighting for itself, trusting itself, occasionally embarrassing itself, and somehow, against considerable odds, becoming something that outlasts all of it. As long as there are stories like this worth telling, I'll be here, digging them out and bringing them back. See you in the next one.